100 tons inside a cabin, so it has to be done very carefully and slowly and one step at a time.
This piece of machinery is an integral link in the power supply chain and has to be treated with care. But the chief electrical engineer is not entirely happy.
The rate's supposed to be higher. Yeah.
It's out of alignment by a few centimeters. It may be a huge project, but the tolerances are tiny. The transformer has to fit like a glove. After this one, there are 5 more transformers to be installed. So the last thing the engineers need is another problem in the tunnel. Tunnel boring has had to stop because the conveyor belt system is not clearing the tunnel fast enough. After literally moving a mountain of rock, the belts are wearing thin and the conveyor system is constantly breaking down. And when the conveyor comes to a stop, so does the tunnel boring.
Of course, at the end of 15 or 20 kilometers of boring, even the belt conveyors get worn out.
It's one more difficulty to overcome, and it couldn't have happened at a worse time. They don't have long until the TBM has to break through and connect the vast sections of tunnel together. Flaviano Sulizin, the man responsible for getting the tunnel borer to reach its target, is stressed.
Well, a project like this is stressful, obviously, because you're always challenging time, challenging difficulties.
The delay caused by the broken conveyor belt is bad news. Soon, all eyes will be on this wall. They must keep the conveyor belt system working. Broken belts arrive by the truckload. To keep on schedule, conveyor belt personnel work overtime, repairing hundreds of shredded belts. Each one takes at least 8 hours to fix. The men work through the night to get the conveyor belt moving, so the tunnel borer can break through on time.
It would have been better if it hadn't happened, but that's our job, to be able to plan forward, to have many plan Bs, but Cs and Ds for any possible event that may occur.
While work is moving slowly on the tunnel, at the dam wall, the mobile concrete pouring platform, called the slip form, is on the verge of victory, finishing the concrete facing on the dam. This pour started nearly 24 hours ago. After months of back-breaking work, covering over 93,000 square meters with concrete, they're only hours from finishing this last long haul, rendering this giant wall as waterproof as possible and strong enough to hold back the reservoir. All that remains after this mammoth effort is to fix a waterproof membrane to the outside of the concrete. The dam is on track, but then more bad news from down in the tunnel. There's been a rockfall, and one of the TBMs has ground to a halt.
What we've got to do is contain it now.
Last night, while we were boring slowly, this collapsed, this rock here. These pieces of rock are still not stable, and we cannot proceed.
The tunnel borers occasionally come across fissures or faults in the rock face. Instead of being ground to dust, huge rocks come crashing down. So not only is the machine unable to make progress, but the men working below are in constant danger.
We now have to make this safe.
After battling electrical issues and a worn-out conveyor, the tunnel borers are facing their worst setback yet. All the effort to finish the dam and powerhouse on time will be for nothing if the TBMs fail to finish the tunnel. This is a serious problem.
With this problem now, and this reduction, this dramatic reduction of the driving rate, this tunnel has now become the most critical drive of the whole project.
With the crumbling rock too loose for the borer to get a grip, the crew have to dig their way out of trouble. It's slow, painstaking, and labor-intensive. Because the boulders are too big to fit on the conveyor belt, each rock has to be manhandled onto a flatbed and taken by train to the surface.
So it's a bit ironic that a machine that's costing millions of dollars, high tech, high sophistication, is reduced to people doing handwork, moving stones one by one.
Well, it's a tough job, it's time-consuming, and but the willingness to go ahead makes you overcome also these problems.
You need tough people to be able to work in conditions like here.
It's an unthinkable delay at a crucial time. At the dam, however, workers are on the home straight. The last stage of this part of the project involves attaching a PVC membrane to the lower part of the dam. Its purpose is to act as an extra protective layer to reduce the chances of leaks. Chief Engineer Richard Graham must get the membrane installed before the dam can start collecting water.
This is very critical. You realize that if this isn't finished, the dam, we can't start filling the lake. So we're really on the real critical path of this project.
Once the membrane's in place, the workers still have to cover it in soil as an extra layer of protection. So there's still a vast amount to do. September the 9th, 2006. After a serious delay, tunnel boring is now back on track. But to stay on target for power production in the autumn of 2007, they must break through this rock face today. But this will only happen if the TBM has been exactly on course for the last 2 years. This is the time they find out whether all their hard work will pay off. The tunnel borer has chewed its way to just shy of the target. All going well, breakthrough will happen in the next 2 hours. 718 days after starting this enormous challenge, the end is in sight. The tunnel borer has cut through 14 kilometers of hard rock. It's the moment of truth. If all the numbers are right, the tunnel borer is now only 2.5 meters from breakthrough. It's been a huge group effort to get this far. Geologists, surveyors, engineers and workers toiling away at the rock face. And it all comes down to a big red circle painted on a wall.
In a tunnel, you always have surprises. You're never confident before you make the breakthrough.
There's no room for error. It's unlikely, but if the machine misses its mark, the entire project will be delayed. But then, another problem. For some reason, the tunnel borer has stopped again. And no one this side of the rock face knows why. On board the TBM, Flaviano Solazin searches desperately for answers.
What happened?
Go ahead, go ahead. Start the engine.
They must get the TBM started up and digging, or this vital deadline could be missed. The Kárahnjúkastífla Dam, September 2006. Deep underground, crews are about to discover if a critical milestone will be reached, or not. The tunnel boring machine has to break through this wall today, but it's stopped dead, and no one knows why. The chief engineer wants answers fast. Flaviano Solazin, the man responsible for the smooth running of this operation, is feeling the strain. But eventually they work out the problem. According to the computer, the tunnel borer should have already broken through. It's alerted the driver with a warning to shut off the power and stop the huge machine. Relieved that the problem is for once a simple one, Chief Engineer Solazin orders the driver to fire up the TBM and push on through. Finally, the huge machine roars into life again. Back on the breakthrough side, people move back from the impact zone. It's clear that the tunnel borer is getting closer. The floors and walls of the cavern are shaking. Finally, cracks appear. Rocks start to fall and eventually the massive cutter head breaks through the last few centimeters of rock face. The cutter head and the target circle match up precisely.
It's an interesting feeling. You hear the machine and you know it's coming and when the first rock falls off the face, you feel very good, you know.
After 2 years of constant drilling, overcoming mechanical failures, rock falls and water bursts, crushing and removing over 1.5 million tons of rock, the team has finished a critical stage of the project. The tunnels are connected and the hydroelectric system is one step nearer to producing power.
It's quite an achievement, being on this job for 5 years and seeing the end, the light in the tunnel, as you say. It's very satisfying.
The TBM crew crowd behind the cutter head. This is the day everyone's been waiting for. It marks a huge milestone. The surveyors and the crew have every reason to celebrate. They've steered the tunnel borer over 14 kilometers on a near perfectly straight line and hit their target within centimeters.
Every breakthrough is emotional. You are achieving one of the targets that you have set maybe years before.
Perfect. We start perfect, we finish perfect. The crew was very good. Really, it was a nightmare for us. For me also. But we are here.
Celebrations are in order, but there isn't much time to rest. The construction team still has a vast amount of work to do. There's the tunnel to clear of debris and the boring machine to be dismantled, along with kilometers of conveyor belt, railway line, power cables and air ducting. And the other 2 tunnel borers still have to fully complete their sections of the tunnel. Work will go on around the clock for another year. June 2008. The reservoir has formed. The enormous effort from the dam construction team paid off, and they made their September deadline for catching the glacial meltwater in time.
It's a satisfaction for all of us working for years and years, and for the workforce, for everybody. It's a challenge which has been won and achieved.
And after several setbacks, the tunnel was completed just 6 months behind schedule. Despite this delay, the powerhouse was up and running less than 2 months late, in November 2007.
When I stood in the power station and all 6 turbines were running full blast, that was for me almost sentimental to stand there and experience that. I must admit that.
This shaft is rotating at 600 revs per minute, driven by the enormous water pressure made possible by the reservoir 40 kilometers away. In the control room, the monitors show the incredible power being generated. Right now, it's nearly 500 megawatts. This is routed through the transformers, now finally perfectly installed, to the power lines and away up the valley. And after doing its work, the water flows peacefully away. This is an astonishing engineering achievement.
It's quite an accomplishment, what has been done here.
It's short, proud and happy.
If you love your job, your work, you do feel proud.
They've battled through the toughest of conditions, with Mother Nature setting the tightest of deadlines. But against all the odds, the designers and builders of the Icelandic Super Dam, the tallest dam of its kind,